Now welcome to another lightning response video, where this time the question comes to us from Alex Brogan, who asked, "Hey Thor, I've been thinking about the Clone Wars lately, and I'm curious about your thoughts on something. If the Clone Wars came out today, I'm not convinced that the fandom would like it. I get the sense it would be berated for being nothing but filler. We all know the Clone Wars has loads of filler, but that filler is what allows us to spend time with the characters. Why do we forgive the Clone Wars for filler, but if Mando has a single episode that doesn't contribute to the overarching plot, people treat it like the cardinal sin?" Okay, so I do think you're probably right that if it came out today or started today instead of back in 2008, that some people, maybe a lot of people, I don't know, but certainly some would complain about the Clone Wars anthology style, or they wouldn't exactly get the point of it. Or that's what they would ask, like, what's the point of this show that bounces from character to character and only has, especially early on or in the first couple seasons, it only has a very loose, overarching narrative beyond everything relating to or being set during the Clone Wars. But here's the thing that's sort of been forgotten lately, or maybe we've in a way been brainwashed, which I'll talk more about in a bit. But there really shouldn't be a point to entertainment beyond being entertained by it. Which isn't to say there can't be a point in terms of a meaning behind a show or a movie or a story, or it trying to convey something, or simply be someone trying to express something. That's not what I'm saying at all. There is a point to creating art. Instead, what I'm saying is that when it boils right down to it, as the one consuming it, you're either enjoying your time watching it, or playing it, or reading it, or whatever it might be, or you're not. The point of entertainment is right in the word or name itself. It is to entertain you. And yet nowadays, as someone who, for better or worse, watches or consumes a ton of entertainment, I get asked all the time by people I know or in the comments of videos or wherever, I get asked if something that comes out, say from Star Wars or Marvel, if it is something they need to watch. But they're not asking if they need to watch it because it was so good in and of itself, so good that it is not something to be missed out on. They're asking if they need to watch it to potentially enjoy something else down the road, or if it'll perhaps improve something they have already watched. They're essentially asking if they need to watch it for future or past reference, and not because it may be something they'll actually enjoy in the moment. A quick story about all this. Back about maybe a year ago when Ant-Man Quantumania came out, I got asked by a friend, like a week or two after the movie came out, they asked me what I thought of it, and to his surprise, I hadn't seen it yet. It actually is the only MCU movie, not counting Black Widow, which of course came out during COVID and exclusively on Disney+. But it's the only MCU movie that I hadn't gone and seen opening weekend, and actually didn't go see in the theater at all. I checked it out when it finally came to Disney+. Anyway, after my friend got over his initial shock that I hadn't gone and seen it, I asked him if he had seen it, and when he said yes, for the sake of conversation, even though I had heard some not so good things about it, I asked him what he thought about it. And instantly his face sort of soured, you could say, and he said that neither he nor his wife had enjoyed it. That they both thought it was one of the worst MCU movies ever. But then he finished by saying one of the strangest things I've probably ever heard. He said, "It pretty much sucked, but I still think you need to go and see it." And no, there wasn't a hint of sarcasm on his face or in his voice or any recognition of what he'd exactly just said to me or how contradictory it sounded. He was being dead serious. He'd just told me to go and pay to see a movie that had sucked, a movie that neither him nor his wife had enjoyed, but that I still needed to see it. And though that wasn't exactly the first time I had realized how kind of brilliant what Marvel had created was, or from their point of view at least, that being the MCU of course, it was the first time I realized just how, again, kind of how brainwashed some of us had become by what they had created, and how people were, for better or worse, they were looking differently at what entertainment is or what it was supposed to be. Because whether by intent all along or because it was a sort of happy accident or a byproduct of kind of wanting to create this shared universe, they, Marvel, had created something that didn't necessarily have to be good in and of itself all the time or in the moment to still be, in a sense, a success or to make them money. In fact, it could even suck. It just had to be important to something else for people to want to go and see it. Entertainment has become more about what's next rather than what's now, fueled by hype generated almost exclusively by fans across social media. And as long as there was or is a promise of something exciting down the road, something amazing perhaps in another movie coming up, you would go and see what's out there now and tolerate just about anything that was a part of leading up to that other thing. For a while anyway. It's not a trick that works indefinitely. You do have to deliver more often than not. And I certainly think plenty of people, when it comes to Marvel especially, they're kind of seeing what's really going on and getting tired of it. Either way, I've come to call this need to see something that is a part of something potentially better as the Captain Marvel effect. Not to rip on that movie necessarily, because I'd argue it was the biggest benefactor of the fear of missing out, or going to see something just because it's a part of something else, or may lead to something else better down the road, or even just offer clues or be an appetizer for what's next. Which at that point in time was Avengers Endgame. Again, not to criticize the movie, not that I think it was a great movie or anything like that, but you could have slapped the Marvel logo on just about any movie set between the release of Infinity War and Endgame, and it would have made a ton of money. Though, as I just said, I don't think that's working so well for Marvel anymore. I think the lack of quality is indeed becoming a rather glaring issue, and it's now making people just not care about any of it anymore. But, in a sense, the effects of that, or because of what Marvel created, and what entertainment in general has become these days, or like I know I've talked about before, the success of shows like Game of Thrones, or Breaking Bad, The Walking Dead, and so on, shows that were serialized in nature, or where they have or had a very defined and prominent ongoing story to follow along with week to week or from episode to episode. Anyway, because of all this, what most people want or expect out of entertainment has long since changed since I was a young kid back in the 80s. And oftentimes my whole family would gather around the one TV in the house to watch something like The A-Team or maybe Knight Rider. And they were very episodic in nature or adventure of the week style. Heck, things have even changed a ton since the Clone Wars came out about 15 years ago, and people were still more than tolerant of that style of show. And quite simply, a big reason these changes have come about in the past decade or so are thanks in large part to things like streaming services that give you so many options at any time and at any place. Not to mention the continued evolution of computer or video games as well. Then there's also things like YouTube, or even TikTok, I guess, that give you the ability to watch individuals produce stuff for you to watch and enjoy as well. Again, there are just endless options of entertainment in general out there. There's just so much you can watch and do nowadays, and so there's always this, I guess you could kind of call it a fear of not necessarily missing out, or even just the feeling like you need to watch something, but of wasting your time on something when you could have been watching or maybe playing or reading something else, something better. People simply want to optimize their entertainment time, if you will. And so, going back to the question a bit and trying to wrap this up before I ramble on and on, I somehow always forget the lightning part of these lightning response videos. But I think, for example, the rise of the term filler, which I would define as an episode of a show that doesn't further the overarching plot in any sort of meaningful way, it simply comes from people wanting stories to be not necessarily more streamlined. We love our long-running multiple-season shows, but we always want them to be on point. We always want important things to be happening, or I may as well have skipped that episode and done something else with my time, one of the other million things I could have been doing with it. And so, yeah, absolutely some episodes of the Clone Wars, especially in the earlier seasons and before multi-episode story arcs became the norm when they happened more sporadically in those first couple seasons, there would be plenty who criticized it and or just didn't, as I was just kind of saying, get the point of watching it, because we always, okay, maybe not always, but we oftentimes watch something with the expectation that it is setting something else up down the road. And if this isn't a part of something bigger and better, what's the point in watching it? Well, that's going to be all I got for you this time. Now it is your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think about all this. Would people complain about the Clone Wars nowadays? And what do you think about the state of entertainment in general? Do you maybe miss simpler times, or do you love the age of limitless options? You can also feel free to ask a question for a future lightning response video. All you got to do is start your comment off with "Hey Thor" and then ask away. But whatever you choose to do, leave those comments below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.